Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Taming Your Amygdala, Brain-Based Strategies to Quiet the Anxious Mind by Catherine M. Pittman, Ph.D., narrated by Rebecca Gallagher. Publisher's Note: this audiobook includes bonus material. Please visit Tantor.com and type Taming Your Amygdala into the search box. Follow the link to the book's page. Then, under the Supplemental Content section, please enter the access code WORRY, and then click the Unlock button to access the bonus material. The code should be entered in all lowercase letters. All figures, tables, worksheets, and exercises referenced in this audiobook can be found in the bonus material. Chapter 1. Understanding Anxiety. Everyone experiences anxiety, but few people understand the true nature of anxiety or how it is related to the emotion-producing structures in our brains that are difficult to spell, let alone comprehend. The goal of this workbook is to help you learn more about these influential parts of your brain, especially the amygdala. Whether you have post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, a phobia, generalized anxiety disorder, or any other anxiety disorder, the amygdala is involved in creating the anxiety you experience. When you are having problems with anxiety, panic, or worry, other people often don't understand what you are going through. You may not even understand it yourself. Anxiety can be a very overwhelming and confusing experience. The good news is that, compared to many other psychological disorders, anxiety disorders are better understood by mental health professionals. And once you learn to recognize what is going on when you experience anxiety, you also know how to do something about your anxiety. This workbook will help you decipher what is happening in your brain and in your body, and why those processes are happening. With this knowledge, you will be able to cope much better with what you are experiencing. Even if other people tell you that your behaviors, feelings, and thoughts don't make sense, this workbook will help you make sense of them, and you are the person that matters. So many of my clients have said, "So that's why this is happening," when they learn about how the brain creates anxiety. It can be such a relief to make sense of what is going on. But knowledge alone is not enough. You also need to know what you can do with that knowledge. You can change the structures in your brain that create anxiety. But achieving that change requires taking a new approach to how you respond to your anxiety and worry. That's why you need this workbook. It is designed not only to help you understand your anxiety-based difficulties, but also to give you the specific tools and steps to train your brain to respond in different ways. Yes, you can change your anxiety. I can't promise you a completely anxiety-free life. No healthy human being can be 100% free of anxiety or fear, and that wouldn't be a good thing anyway. I personally wouldn't want to be on the roads with drivers who have no anxiety. What I can do is help you identify the goals you have in life and give you the tools you need to make sure that anxiety and worry do not keep you from achieving those goals. And that is exactly what this workbook will guide you through. By the end, you'll have a much better understanding of the meaning and purpose of anxiety and how to manage it effectively. Many people are familiar with the term anxiety, but they may not know all the different ways it can appear in people's lives. Some people feel nauseous, some tremble, some get headaches, and some just feel like running away. While we each have our own unique way of experiencing anxiety, the root cause of our anxiety is the same: the amygdala. This is the part of your brain that controls the anxiety or fear response. If you want to manage your anxiety, the amygdala is the most important part of the brain to understand. Although the responses that the amygdala creates are designed to protect you, the responses may not fit the situation. Most of these responses prime your body to fight or flee from a potential predator or threat. But fighting and fleeing are often not appropriate responses in the 21st century. Fortunately, certain aspects of the anxiety or fear response can be changed. In this workbook, you will learn a variety of ways to tame your amygdala so you can change your anxiety. Rating your anxiety. The first step you can take if you want to change your anxiety is to simply measure it. That way, you can better recognize your anxiety and observe how it changes from day to day and in different situations. In some situations and on some days, it will be stronger, and if you keep track of it, you may be able to discern why it changes. You will also get a better understanding of the different dimensions of your anxiety. Measuring your anxiety can help you become more aware of what is happening in your body when the amygdala activates the anxiety or fear response, which will help you in these ways. 1. Becoming more aware of your specific anxiety symptoms can help you manage how you react to them. Anxiety is designed to be an uncomfortable and distressing experience, so it is easy to simply react to it negatively without awareness. You may not notice that the muscles in your back and shoulders are very tense, or recognize that your headache is due to muscle tension. You may also misinterpret feelings of nausea and think you are ill rather than anxious. Becoming aware of the physical aspects of anxiety will allow you to have greater control over how you react to your anxiety, and it will open up more opportunities for controlling the anxiety response itself. 2. Identifying your specific symptoms can help you recognize the evolutionary purpose behind them and normalize them. Anxiety is part of an evolutionarily adaptive defense response that was designed with one important purpose in mind: to protect us from danger. The defense response, also called the stress response, protected our ancestors from dangers like wild animals or other predators by prompting them to run away from, fight against, or hide from these threats. People without fear or worries were less likely to survive or make sure their children survived. Therefore, humans alive today are likely to be the descendants of the frightened people, not the calm people. Even though most of the concerns we face in our modern lives are different, we still have that built-in defense response that creates anxiety. Having more awareness of the symptoms you experience will help you notice the evolutionary benefit of the anxiety response reflected in many of your symptoms. For example, when you are anxious, your heart may start to pound. This makes sense when you understand that the amygdala is preparing the body to run away by pumping blood more strongly into your arms and legs. Even though anxiety can be distressing, it is a normal operation of the human brain. Everyone has anxiety to some degree, and the goal is not to eliminate it completely, but to make sure it doesn't limit your life. 3. Recognizing how your anxiety changes in response to different situations can help you pinpoint your anxiety triggers and recognize other useful factors. Everyone's anxiety changes from moment to moment, as well as from day to day. By taking repeated measurements of your anxiety symptoms, you can begin to recognize that your anxiety is associated with certain triggers, like particular sounds, situations, or thoughts. Certain aspects of your life, like sleep and exercise, can also affect your anxiety. You may notice as well that your anxiety tends to occur at certain times of the day. By measuring fluctuations in the frequency and intensity of your anxiety symptoms, you can develop an awareness of the various factors that influence your anxiety. Coming up, we'll review a worksheet that gives you a way to quickly assess your anxiety. Please complete it a couple of times per day for a week or so to get an idea of how you experience anxiety. Remember, no one experiences anxiety just like you do. Even though there are common aspects of anxiety, everyone experiences it differently. Worksheet: Rating Your Anxiety. This survey is an adapted version of the Hamilton Anxiety Rating Scale. You can use it to measure your anxiety and get a better idea of your specific anxiety symptoms. Anxiety involves more than just your mood, and this survey breaks down anxiety into several different dimensions that can impact you. It will help you become more familiar with and perhaps less overwhelmed by the different aspects of your anxiety. Some symptoms may surprise you, as you may not have realized they could be associated with anxiety. Use this scale to rate the intensity of each aspect of your anxiety at the present time. At the end of the survey, you will add up your scores to get an overall rating of your current anxiety. 0 equals not present, 1 equals mild, 2 equals moderate, 3 equals severe. 1. Anxious mood. Worries, anticipating the worst, fearful anticipation, irritability. 2. Tension. Muscle tightness, fatigue, startle response, moved to tears easily, trembling, restlessness, inability to relax. 3. Fears. Of the dark, strangers, being left alone, animals, insects, traffic, crowds, illness, etc. 4. Insomnia. Difficulty falling asleep, broken sleep, early awakening, unsatisfying sleep and fatigue upon waking, dreams, nightmares, night terrors. 5. Intellectual effects. Difficulty concentrating, problems focusing, poor memory. 6. Depressed mood. Loss of interest, lack of pleasure in hobbies, sadness, emotional numbness, early waking, feeling worse in the morning. 7. Somatic/muscular symptoms. Pains and aches, twitching, stiffness, muscle jerks, grinding teeth, unsteady voice, increased muscle tone. 8. Somatic/sensory symptoms. Ringing in ears, blurred vision, hot and cold flashes, feelings of weakness, prickling sensations, dizziness, metallic taste. 9. Cardiovascular symptoms. Rapid heartbeat, pounding heart, fluttering heart, throbbing of vessels, feeling of pain in the chest, missing a beat. 10. Respiratory symptoms. Pressure or constriction in the chest, choking feelings, sighing, difficulties breathing, tendency to hold one's breath. 11. Gastrointestinal symptoms. Difficulty swallowing, abdominal pain, burning sensations, abdominal fullness, nausea, vomiting, gurgling stomach, loose bowels, diarrhea, loss of weight, constipation. 12. Genitourinary symptoms. Frequency of urination, urgency of urination, no period, heavy or prolonged periods, difficulties with orgasm, premature ejaculation, loss of interest in sex, difficulties maintaining erection or ejaculating. 13. Autonomic symptoms. Dry mouth, flushing, paleness, tendency to sweat, giddiness, tension headache, raising of hair. 14. Behavior: fidgeting, restlessness or pacing, tremor of hands, furrowed brow, strained face, sighing or rapid breathing, repeated swallowing, avoidance. Now, total all the numbers for each of the 14 items. This will give you an overall anxiety score for this situation or time. What does your anxiety score tell you? 0 to 13, minimal anxiety. 14 to 21, mild to moderate anxiety. 22 to 35, moderate to severe anxiety. 36 to 42, severe anxiety. It is a good idea to use the anxiety scale more than one time per day and to make a habit of recording both the date and time for each score. It is also helpful to record what was happening at the time you completed the scale so you can become more aware of what triggers your anxiety. Details like this make it a more useful record. You may want to get a personal journal so you have plenty of space to write your anxiety scores and other helpful notes. Or you can make copies of the record of daily anxiety provided in the accompanying bonus material. If you aren't interested in monitoring your anxiety, or if you find that too much assessment increases your anxiety, you don't need to keep this record longer than a week or so. However, I encourage you to retake this assessment periodically as you work through the various exercises and tools in this workbook. As you begin to try different coping strategies, keeping this record will allow you to see how different strategies affect your anxiety score and how much you are improving, so you can determine which tools are most effective in reducing your anxiety. Worksheet: Record of Daily Anxiety. Use this worksheet to keep track of your anxiety scores over time and make note of any potential triggers associated with your anxiety. Be sure to use the survey from the Rating Your Anxiety worksheet to calculate your score for each instance of anxiety. Here's an example. A blank template to record your own anxiety scores can be found in the accompanying bonus material. Date: 10/25. Time: 7:30 p.m. Anxiety score: 16. Triggers or other notes: what was happening at the time? Had a difficult conversation with my partner. Anticipation of the worst. Breakup. Date: 10/26. Time: 10 a.m. Anxiety score: 25. Triggers or other notes: what was happening at the time? Received an email from my boss about an unexpected work assignment. Chapter 2. Meet your amygdala. The part of your brain that sends the signals to produce anxiety is small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. The amygdala is roughly the size and shape of an almond. In fact, the word amygdala, pronounced amygdala, comes from the Greek word for almond. You actually have two amygdalae, one on each side of your brain. However, the tradition is to refer to this paired structure in the singular, so I will discuss the amygdala in this workbook. If you want to show someone where your amygdala is, you can use your index fingers to point it out. Just point your right index finger at your right ear and your left index finger at your right eye. The location where the lines from these two fingers meet is about where your right amygdala is situated in your brain. You could do the same thing, but mirrored, to point to your left amygdala. The amygdala is located deep within the brain and has connections to some very influential brain structures located in that same area, like the brainstem, hypothalamus, hippocampus, and ventral striatum, as well as arousal networks that affect the cortex. The interconnections between these brain regions allow the amygdala to create your physical experience of fear, changing your emotions, thoughts, attentional focus, and various bodily functions in a fraction of a second. What's more, these changes occur without your control and mostly outside of your awareness. It's for this reason that we often describe the amygdala as having the ability to hijack the brain and take charge over how we think and feel. This explains why we often don't understand our emotional reactions and why it sometimes feels like our emotions are out of control. You don't have much control over what your amygdala does, although you can learn some ways to influence it if you learn more about how it functions. At its core, the amygdala is a small but powerful part of your brain designed to assist you in detecting, avoiding, defending against, and surviving dangers. The amygdala actually does more than this, but we will focus on these functions because they relate to the amygdala's role in producing anxiety. In particular, the amygdala is in charge of initiating a pre-programmed defensive reaction that is found not just in humans, but in all animals. When it triggers this built-in reaction in our bodies, we often refer to the entire reaction as fear, because fear is the emotional state that we are experiencing. But the reaction the amygdala creates involves many more processes in our bodies besides the emotion of fear, including the inhibition of stomach activity, an increase in blood flow to the extremities, and the release of adrenaline. What we are really experiencing is a defensive motivational state, a collection of changes in our bodies that prepare us to take actions intended to protect us. This defensive emotional state is what produces anxiety, which is very similar to the feeling of fear. When we can identify a clear and imminent danger, like a dog that is growling or a car that is speeding towards someone crossing the street, we use the term fear to describe the emotion that the amygdala creates. In contrast, when we feel this emotional state, when no clear danger exists, just the potential for a future threat or negative outcome, for example, when we are worrying about an upcoming exam or dreading the awkward conversation on a first date, we call the emotion anxiety. Whether you are feeling fear, anxiety, dread, or a similar emotion, your body is in that defensive state produced by the amygdala, a state also called the fight or flight response. One problem with this pre-programmed defense response is that the dangers it was designed to protect you against have been successfully eliminated in most parts of the world. For example, you probably are not at risk of being eaten by a predator as you go about your daily life. But your amygdala is still on the lookout for dangers like this. Therefore, the stressors of today's world, like difficulty paying the mortgage or a potential argument with your boss, still elicit a defensive reaction from your amygdala that is intended to help you fight or run away from the threat. That is why your heart rate increases and your muscles tense up. These responses are typically not helpful because they don't fit the situation. You can't run away from your mortgage, and it wouldn't be wise to hit your boss. The defensive reaction may help us escape true physical dangers every once in a while, but it doesn't provide an advantage in most of the situations you face. You will come to recognize that your amygdala often creates a defense response, including the feeling of fear or anxiety, on the basis of incorrect or insufficient information. One way to look at it is to say that the amygdala has good intentions but often produces unnecessary anxiety and takes us along for the ride. And it is not a very pleasant ride. However, you can learn how to gain more control over this small part of your brain that has such an important impact on your life. Is every amygdala the same? Now that you know more about the amygdala and its influence, you might be wondering whether different people have the same kind of amygdala. Do some people have an amygdala that reacts more strongly or more frequently, causing it to produce more anxiety and fear than the average person's amygdala? The answer is yes. We have discovered that some people, and even some horses, dogs, and mice, have an amygdala that is more likely to produce fear or anxiety. For example, children with anxiety disorders have been shown to exhibit differences in their amygdala compared to children without anxiety disorders. These differences in anxiety often become apparent during the first months of children's lives, when we notice that some are more easily startled or frightened. Studies have shown that these differences are partly a result of genetic influences, meaning that difficulties with anxiety tend to run in families. Therefore, if you struggle with anxiety, it is likely that other members of your family suffer from anxiety too, although perhaps in different ways. However, as you will learn in chapters 9 and 10, the amygdala is capable of learning to respond differently, so the amygdala you are born with does not have to determine your destiny. For example, many shy and anxious children grow up to be effective public speakers and performers. But genetics aren't the only reason why people are anxious. Many people who don't seem anxious in their early lives can develop anxiety difficulties later on. The fact that the amygdala is capable of learning also means that some people have an amygdala that learns to produce anxiety in more situations than it once did. The amygdala learns from our specific life experiences, and it responds to objects, situations, and events that have been associated with negative events. For example, if you are in a car accident, you may begin to have anxiety when riding in a car. Suddenly, anxiety is a more limiting factor in your life than it was before. When the event is very threatening and considered traumatic, the amygdala may be even more severely affected. After a traumatic life experience, changes occur in the amygdala that cause it to produce more anxiety in general, not just in situations associated with the trauma. But even though your amygdala may have learned to produce more anxiety, or to produce anxiety in situations it never reacted to before, it can also learn to respond differently again if it is given the right kind of lessons. Although you can't fully control the brain you inherited, or every life experience that comes your way, you can focus on increasing your resources for taming your amygdala. You should be the one in charge of your life, not your amygdala. How can I have more influence over my amygdala? You can influence your amygdala in two key ways. First, you can focus on changing your amygdala's general level of reactivity by targeting aspects of your daily routine that research has shown to have an impact on how the amygdala responds. In other words, you can tame your amygdala by living your life in a way that makes the amygdala generally calmer. Second, you can work on teaching your amygdala to respond differently in specific situations by providing it with new information about these situations, an approach called exposure. Most people find that teaching the amygdala is more challenging because it requires exposing the amygdala and themselves to situations in which they typically experience anxiety. Combining these two approaches of calming and teaching the amygdala is the most effective way to tame it. The first approach, changing some of your habits in your day-to-day routine, may be the best place to start taming the amygdala. In fact, I will let you in on some very helpful information that has only been discovered in the last 15 years or so. The amygdala's function.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?